Hello and welcome to another Indie Game Spotlight. And today I'm so excited because we've got Secg with us and we're going to be digging into his game Alpengard. Welcome, Secg, and thanks for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. So with no further ado, what we're going to do is I am going to first of all ask you, what has inspired you to make this game? And tell me a bit about how you named it, because that's really interesting.
Oh, great question. I grew up on fantasy, Lord of the Rings, started playing fantasy role-playing games like D&D in the early 1980s, eventually expanded across, I've played some of the World of Darkness games and Aliens and various things, but I was always drawn back to the fantasy more than the sci-fi. And I think like a lot of us indie creators, you can look at the huge companies and think, wow, maybe I can make a world for them. And eventually the open gaming license came out, but somewhere it clicked in the early 2000s that, hey, I can make my own game. And why should I use someone else's rules? And so that was really what inspired it, was just the love of fantasy and wanting to make sure that I could create a game where people could design the characters they want and have the sort of in-depth, rich fantasy stories that they would enjoy. That's definitely been my driving force.
Fantastic. So the name of the game is Alpengard.
Yes.
Now, I really like that. What inspired that name?
My wife and I came up with it sitting around the table trying to figure out the name for the game. And I thought, well, mountains, I always like that old English feel. And of course, Midgard is Middle Garden or Middle Earth. That's where Tolkien got it. And just from the old Teutonic beliefs. And I just thought like Alps, mountains, guard. And then so it just, I forget who said it first, but it just kind of popped out there. Hey, Alpengard. And hey, great. Let's roll with it. But I had been digging into the Old English for the sake of the game and use a lot of that kind of terminology. So it just fit. And yeah, it was absolutely ideal for it.
Superb. That's great. So I'm going to do this now and watch my camera go mental as I say. Oh. If I was to say to you, how complex in your game, and on this side it would be exceedingly complicated, and on this side it'd be nice and light, where would you pop it?
So the crunchy versus squishy spectrum.
There's crunchy versus squishy spectrum. That's Excellent. It. I'm renaming it now.
I think I would. So the character building process is more on the crunchy side. Most definitely, it's got a lot of detail and you can build your character exactly how you want. And however, once you get into the play, there is crunch to it in, say, combat or skill challenges. However, once you're used to it, there's definitely flow. So I almost divide the game into two parts and say the character building is on the crunchy end of the spectrum, and the gameplay itself is more, I'd say, in the middle, on the squishier, a little bit off center on the squishy, but that takes some getting used to. But then once you know it, it's, oh yeah, I get how that works, and people can roll with it.
But isn't that the same with all games? I mean, whenever you first start playing a game, there is always a learning curve. Absolutely. And then you've been playing it a few months, and before you know it, it's absolutely just like flying through it. So
for sure.
I think that's great.
It's one of those things in life, sometimes you don't know what you know, whether in anything in business, and you try to teach someone and you forget all the things that you have learned. But that's what's fun about teaching new players, is because all those questions are absolutely going to come up and, oh yeah, I forgot to explain that. Should probably provide that information. But
that's brilliant. So we're now going to move on to sort of dice and stuff like that. I mean, this is where you'll see Dean start to get excited. He always gets excited when we start talking about dice.
I do.
So what dice do you use? Is it the polyhedral dice sets? What dice do you use?
Yes. So my primary task die is the D30, which I fell in love with during the 1980s. And then the remainder of the dice are the traditional 7-dice set of D20 down to D4s. So, and everything in between the D12, 2 D10s, D8, D6. So a lot of people are going to be used to that standard set. What they're not going to be used to is this. And this directly feeds into the core mechanic of Alpengard. And it's a roll high system where you roll a d30, add some modifiers, aim for a target number. If you reach that target number or exceed it, you succeed on the task. And if you come below, you fail. But there's also a little extra trickiness there because there's an energy pool called pneuma, which is your spirit. That's where we get words like pneumatic or pneumonia on the negative side, but that's a Greek word for spirit or breath or wind. And there's an energy pool you can use to upgrade your rolls as well, which I can explain the full mechanic if you'd like, or
we will do after I've asked you. What did you like about the D30? What makes you go ooh when you roll that D30?
Yeah, it's having grown up on the D20. Great, I love it. You get that 16, 17, 18 above, and you think, oh yeah, that's very gratifying. The D20, each facet is 5%, effectively, of probability, whereas this, each facet is 3 1/3%. And I thought, you know what, that just breaks it down a bit more, creates a little bit more focused randomness in there. And as I mentioned, it became essential for the Alpengard mechanic and breaking things down, which I'll explain more in a minute. But yeah, it was just fun to say, you know what, I rolled a 27. And it created a little bit more layer of, I wonder what I'm going to get. Is that really a good roll? Oh, yeah. Because people would often be used to the D20 and then they'd have to sort of deprogram themselves a little bit. And, oh, yeah, 23 is a really solid roll. So yeah, it just became fun. But I ignored it for a couple decades until I started working on Alpengard and realized, whoa, I'm going to put this front and center. So, yeah.
Brilliant. I love stuff like that. As a fan of rolling dice, any dice I can roll is a positive thing. The more dice, the bigger the dice, the more fun. So I don't see any. I think that is absolutely great that you've got a D30 in there. We don't see many D30 games, do we, Dean?
This is my first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I wasn't aware of any others. I know Dungeon Crawl Classics uses the D30 as an auxiliary die on things, along with things like the D24. As far as I know, and I learned about that later, long after I started working on Alpengard, but as far as I know, Alpengard is the only one that puts the D30 first, but there may be something else out there that I just don't know about. But
okay.
That's great. So we're now going to I'm going to see Dean suddenly sit up as I say, go on then, take us through the core mechanics of the system.
Right on. Oh, do you want me to go ahead, or Dean, did you want to throw something?
No. If you start, I'll be making notes here, and then I'll come in with some questions afterwards.
All right. So the D30 plus the pneuma pool, those are what drive the core mechanic. So again, D30, this is called a standard roll, where it's effectively a baseline of 0. You start with your D30 and you add your mods and attempt to hit a target number. So what this gives you is a 1 through 30 variable range, which is a good simulation of the randomness of life. Whereas your fixed modifier, that is your skill level. So, which can go up to a maximum of 20 in Alpengard. I deliberately capped it at 20, even for the most skillful people or powerful monsters, just because I felt like adding too high of a modifier just sometimes got a little, I mean, it works. There are great systems out there that do that, but I didn't want to be adding a plus 45. I thought, let's just cap it. And really the randomness is in the roll. And I felt like a max plus 20 mod was really realistic to life, because part of Alpengard is fantastical realism, where of course it's a fantasy world, but I wanted it to be relatable to what we all experience on a daily basis. So that standard roll gives you the 1 through 30 variable range. You can also, however, burn 1 pneuma and do an improved roll, in which case the D20 comes out. And instead you start, which sounds inferior, but it's actually not, because you start with a fixed base of 10 and then roll the D20 on top of that, and then add your fixed modifiers. So what you are now doing is putting yourself in the top 2/3 of randomness instead of the full 1 through 30 variable range. So by burning that 1 pneuma, and again, that's reflective of real life, is people who are more skillful can burn that pneuma, and this is someone who's going to execute at a consistently higher level. And once you're high enough level in Alpengard, you can burn 2 pneuma on the advanced roll, which starts with a base of 20, and you roll a d10, and then add your fixed mod. So now you're in the top 1/3 of execution. So this is your great scientist, your excellent musician, your elite soldier. These are people with high fixed modifiers and significant pneuma pools. So this is someone who could just be burning pneuma and executing it advanced, and just ridiculously consistent. But hey, even Bruce Lee can get tired, right? I mean, even the best can get exhausted, start making mistakes, in which case, boom, we're back to the D30. And yes, that fixed modifier is still there. Your skill, an Olympian's skill level does not change when she's tired. But if she's fatigued, all of a sudden things start to fall off. That's not because she lost her capabilities. It's because, in Alpengard terms, she's doing this instead of burning all that pneuma on the front end to consistently execute. So I felt like this would create a fun dynamic of pneuma management, feed directly into the core mechanic. And pneuma, by the way, feeds into a whole bunch of other things. You can pretty much do anything with it. You can use it to fuel powers, upgrade powers, reroll undesirable results, improve your challenges in situations. So it ties to everything. But yes, the core mechanic definitely surrounds starting with the D30, but then possibly a D20 or D10. So the D20 is the improved roll, and then the D10 is the advanced roll.
That sounds fascinating. I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
And the first one is, I'm going to put that to later on. The first one is, you've got a skills cap of 20. Can your modifiers be negative?
Yes.
So you could potentially have a D30 roll and say a -4 or a -5.
Absolutely. So for example, armor might impede one of your life skills that you're using, such as lurk, which is my sneak skill. So yeah, if you're claying around in metallic armor or just something that restricts your motion, and your lithe is my equivalent of dexterity and agility, and it can knock off of that, and you say, you're getting a negative roll. And with the D30, 1 is automatic failure and 30 is automatic success. Could be a little difference if there are a couple opposed rolls, but when you burn to go to improved or advanced, there is no automatic failure. Because even if you roll a 1 on that D20, no, that's an 11, because you started with a base fixed 10 and you add 1 to that. So if you burn on that pneuma in terms of roll upgrades, then the auto failure completely drops out of the equation. And it might even be an auto success. If you're at a target number that's 11, well, you burn on improved. I don't care unless you have a negative modifier, you're successful just by burning 1 pneuma.
That was one of my next questions, because obviously if you could critically fumble, you go from a 3.33% to a 5% to a 10% chance of fumbling.
Precisely, yeah.
And
so
you don't want that. Yeah, brilliant. Mm-hmm. However, do you have the crit success?
Yes, I do. So with skills, it's pretty subjective, and so I just leave that up to the game master's discretion. However, yes, there is an optional rule, which you'll see in Chapter 9 of the core rulebook, of just the critical hits, and then potentially on top of that, you can do what I call the damage avalanche, which is exploding dice. And depending on the stance, you'll roll extra harm. And if you roll a particular number on the die, it'll be essentially a number of D4s. And if you roll a 4 on you get to roll another one. And I've seen it suddenly explode. So yes, there are the crits if the GM wants to go there. Although Alpengard, I deliberately kept the numbers small. Part of that, no plus 46 to succeed. So I really wanted to make every point count. So it is on the lower end as far as.
What are the kind of typical DC ranges that you would expect to be up against?
Depends on what level your character is, but it's easy, could be something like a 5 or a 10. And if I'm talking just a straight inanimate challenge, that, hey, just hit this target number, and extremely difficult could be 45, to the point where, hey, if you don't have a high enough fixed mod to even get to 45, even with a maximum roll, I'll still give it to you if you roll a 30 or a 20 or a 10, as the case may be. But yes, normally your difficulty ratings are probably going to be in the upper teens to upper 20s range. That's, yeah, it's been good across all levels, even at high levels. It's because Alpengard is a system of trade-offs, and I deliberately made sure that if you stack one area, great, you are suffering in another area. So there are things where even the most skillful characters coming up to 30th level, you can still absolutely botch something because you don't know how to do that very well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And the bonuses you get to your skill roll, is that a combination of your skill training plus your attribute modifier?
Yes. So the life skills they hinge. So I have 5 root traits, which are my ability scores, and they all feed into various life skills. And so, yes, you will get a bonus from the appropriate root trait and really a secondary root trait. So you get full of one and half another. But I cap it at 10 for the root trait bonus. But just because so many of these skills lurk, sure, that's lithe, you're sneaking. But wait a minute. Mental instinct also plays a big role. So I give you a partial bonus from your wise score as well. So I give you half your wise. So you get your full lithe, which is one of the root traits. So they're brawn, lithe, smart, wise, and glint. And so you get that bonus that will go up to 10, but then you also have training bonuses. So just as there are standard, improved, and advanced roles for combat, or say hastened, which is my equivalent of initiative, there are also standard, improved, and advanced training mods for your life skills. So you have training levels you can assign, and if you only have standard training in something, you are stuck with the D30. But if you have improved training, you get a fixed bonus for that, and you have the option to burn a Numa on the D20. If you have advanced training, you have a higher fixed mod, and you have the option to burn the Numa and do the 20 plus D10. So again, you can compress those life skills up to the upper portions of the statistical variable range as well.
Right. With the so at the moment you can have up to 10 bonus points from your attribute, up to 10 from your skill training.
So actually, it's the skill training is, even with advanced, you only get a +2 from it, but there are other powers you can stack along the way. And there are, so powers, magic that people use to help each other, as well as magic objects, effectively empowered items.
Yeah.
So those will all cap at 10, and I allow them all to stack with each other. So it's not highest magic bonus prevails. It's if 2 of your friends have powers that can boost your look, which is your perception roll, and they want to throw it all on there, they can both stack and push you up towards that higher fixed modifier.
Yeah.
They'll be burning Numa to do it, but
yeah. Obviously you cap at 10 with negatives.
yes.
So I've got really good attributes. I spawned on my rolling.
Yes.
I've got +10 from that. And with some good gear, I've got, say, another +15. So that's 25, but it's going to be capped at 20. But I now have a -5 because of some situation.
Right.
Am I down to 15 or 20?
20.
20.
So yeah, I will allow that extra 5 to be there to
absorb the
because you are that good.
Yeah.
So it's one of those frustrating people who, how is this person successful even in just ridiculously adverse circumstances? So yeah, I will leave that as cushion against any negatives that happen to get thrown your way.
Okay. What I'm seeing here, and I really do like it, is your training doesn't just give you points. It gives you something far more important, which is the ability to focus, use Numa to effectively enhance your use of a skill, which means the majority of your bonuses, especially at first level, come from your attributes. And then as you go up the levels, you get better gear, you get more powers, abilities, magic, you can start getting bonuses elsewhere.
Absolutely. And your allies can help you, and for sure.
Okay, I like that because it keeps numbers within a certain range. And the big bonus is spending that point and rolling a D20 plus 10. So now all of a sudden, if you've maxed, that's 30 plus a D20, or you can get to 40 plus a D10. which for the most difficult thing would be a 50-50 chance of doing it.
Yeah. And there are creatures, say, example, with defense scores that could go up to 49 or 50. So, but that creature will very likely have a weak defense. So I have 3 defenses, which are nimble, fettle, and mindful. So nimble is dodge and evasion, avoiding a sword or a ray that's shot at you. Fettle is resisting poisons, diseases, things that target your internal health. And then mindful is resisting the mental attacks and attempting to fly down. So if you have a creature that has a ridiculous nimble defense, oh my gosh, the assaulters, which are the warriors in the party, are never going to be able to hit this thing. Well, it's either going to have a lower fettle or a lower mindful, unless I just decide to be mean and give it astronomical defenses in every category, but which I might do in a final boss fight for a bunch of 30th level characters. But for the most part,
hang on. A GM being mean? No, I don't believe it for a second.
Happens.
No, never happens. No.
Right. I think from the mechanics side of things, that is fantastic, the core mechanics. They sound solid. We haven't touched on damage, but you've already talked about exploding dice and stuff like that on damage. Is it now, Vicky, a good time to move to what defines characters?
I think it is, and I think you should ask it since you're already there.
Exactly.
Unless Serge's got something you want to add.
I was going to say one more thing on the harm, the damage, is there is standard, improved, and advanced damage as well. So it's another way you can expend Pneuma. So you have your variable dice, say from hitting something with an explosion, a sword, whatever it is, but you can also burn 1 Pneuma on improved harm. And so it's equal to 5/8 of the maximum die rounded up. So for a D8, if you burn 1 Pneuma, you start with a base fixed 5 and then add your harm modifier to it. Versus a D10, it becomes a 7 and so forth. So there can be those situations, and especially for a character that can do area of effect damage. And if you've hit a bunch of targets at the same time, we got to get rid of these things. Do I really want to roll? Yeah, it's 1 Pneuma and I'm getting low, but yeah, let me burn the 1 Pneuma on improved harm, and that'll upgrade all the harm across the board. And if you're high enough level, you could do advanced and just burn and do maximum of the random damage across the board. So, yeah. But
I like that.
Yeah. We're talking about burning Pneuma here. So before we go on to characters, let's ask that big important question. Pneuma as a resource pool.
Yes.
How easy is it to get back the Pneuma you've spent?
Excellent. You get it back when you have a full night's rest. So, and one of the things that hinges on is having full nutrition and full hydration. So I threw in some more resource management into the situation because, hey, and soldiers know this in the field, that's why you have your, at least in the American military, it's the MREs, the meal ready to eat. You need that food. And I'm sure the British military has the equivalent. You need to have that so you can concentrate and refuel. We all need that in everyday life. So if you don't have the full food and water that you need, you might not recharge all your lost Pneuma. And what that actually did, going back to life skills, is suddenly cooking becomes important. So I wanted to make the not in the spotlight life skills come to life, because everybody stacks the combat related ones. Can I spot something? Or the social ones. Can I be influential and lie and get us out of the situation? But wait a minute. What about cooking and winemaking? Well, I might throw you into a very interesting role-playing situation because I've put you in a desert for 5 days, you've run out of food and water, and you just killed a troll. Can I eat it? What about my friends? Or will it cause disease or make us all vomit? Well, all of a sudden, that character who has improved or advanced cook training becomes very, very important. And I have a friend who's been deliberately stacking his Exarch to not only be an excellent magic user, but a master chef. And so, ogre nuggets, or we killed some horrible slimy dragon. Can you make gumbo? Yes, absolutely, but you have to purify it because there was poison in its veins. So that Pneuma pool, because it's so important, it brings in aspects like that.
Fantastic.
Nice.
I like it. Anything that makes these skills useful rounds out the character, brings a lot more depth to the character you're playing.
Absolutely.
So on characters, we talked about 5 attributes. You called them life.
Oh, the root traits?
The root traits, that's it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you got 5 of those. They then feed or influence skills. How many skills have you got?
So I got 30 life skills.
Yeah.
All the way from barter down to all the way down to writ, which is just your basic literacy. And by the way, if you don't have training in a skill, you cannot use it. So you do not get automatic standard training in writ. So your character starts out illiterate, and that can create some fun situations as well. But yes, 30 of those life skills and a bunch of other statistics like your wise score will feed directly into hasten, which is your initiative. I did that instead of live because I figured, you know what, that's speed of mind as much as speed of body, your reaction.
I love it.
So,
I love it because we use intelligence as our modifier for so yeah, absolutely.
very cool.
Yeah. I was asked why, and I said, you're there, something happens around you. No matter how dexterous you are, if your brain can't analyze and come up with a way of dealing with what's just happened, you're going to be going slowly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The quickest person in the world can have deer in the headlights syndrome and just freeze. And that's where, I don't care how strong or fast you are, your mind unlocks it and allows that capability to go forward. So totally agree with you. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we like this system. I can already tell we like this system. This is my type of system.
Yes, I think this is going to have to go on the requesting a one-shot list. So the systems we really love, we request a one-shot, and we'll make those arrangements afterwards. But I think this is definitely going on the list.
Very
definitely.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got your 5 root traits, your 30 life skills. Have you got things like hit points to record damage?
Yes. So that's grit, and your brawn will feed directly into that. Again, I reward all of those root traits. And by the way, you don't roll dice for them. You just stack points. So they start at 0, which doesn't mean you're incapacitated. It just means you might have undeveloped potential or just a lack of gifting in that area. But as you go through your career, you just stack the points and they will feed into all kinds of other statistics. So grit is one of them, and brawn feeds into that. There's even a healing modifier under your grit umbrella, so that if you receive a healing power, you will gain extra grit back based upon your brawn, which is strength and health. So that's the reward for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, you got that all-important pneuma.
Yes.
Where does that come from?
So your glint, which is your charisma and presence, feeds directly into that. So all of a sudden, the seemingly irrelevant dump stat of what's charisma that's so often overlooked, suddenly that's rocketed front and center. But even in stress testing the system, because it was really 14 years from start to print, and one buddy of mine, he built a character and he deliberately kept his glint at 0 throughout his entire career, even up to 30th level, because he wanted to see what would happen. And, at first he suffered because his pneuma was only based upon his level and tier. But by the end of it, he was just fine. So he was able to focus on those other root traits and the role-playing aspects that they brought into it. But everything has a reward. Wise feeds into hasten. You're smart, which is your intelligence. You'll get extra life skill training levels, and you'll also gain bonus languages. So when you're assigning that point every level, you're thinking, because you get 1 at every level. So it's always fun to gain a new level, because at minimum you're getting 1 root trait point, and probably a life skill training level or another power access from your call, which is your calling or class. So when you're looking at those 5 root traits, there's an incentive for everything. And it's gratifying to see players come back to me and say, dude, you created this game. What should I do? I don't know what to do. And that means that this person is really wrestling with the decision, because there are good options in every case. And I just think, okay, that means this is worthwhile.
Yeah, I'm going to need a week to create a character, because I'm going to have to create it, then I have to redo it, then I have to repurpose it, then I have to jig it, and then I'm going to finally... That's what I'm like when I create characters. Everyone always makes fun of me.
Yeah,
excellent. Well, I did put a handy creation guide on the Alpengard website. So if you click on the Friends page along the top and scroll down, you'll eventually find a step-by-step with screenshots walk you through the process.
Fantastic. And all of those links are in the description. So just pop down to the description, have a click there. You can jump to all the links we're talking about here, and get a head start. Okay, so I've got a good understanding now of the kind of character, what defines the character. Is there anything we've missed, anything you haven't mentioned that helps define your character?
I think it's not necessarily, I mean, there are other stats. For example, a big one is entwinement. So one of the things I wanted was magic objects to grow with you throughout your career, because I found in so many systems that, oh wow, I'm the samurai and I got my ancestral katana from my father and it's useless by level 5 because I found a better sword. So I wanted a magic object to be able to grow with you. So what you have are called entwinement slots, and magic objects, most of them, will only work when they are entwined to your soul. So you have a certain number of slots you can apply to them, and you can empower them at varying levels, from nadir at the bottom all the way to apex. So 6 levels of empowerment, and some of the magic objects only have a couple just because there wasn't that much gradation for the sake of that particular object. But they will cost us, these empowerment levels will cost a certain number of slots, and you can make them grow with you. And at first, if you only have one magic object, sure, I'll pump everything into it and go with apex. But when you start to get other magic objects as you grow in your career and those slots are limited, you're thinking, okay, should I do this one at medial and that one at greater empowerment and that one at lesser? So it creates a fun dynamic, and it's not like you can just switch them on and off. You have to go through a ritual in a special place. So you have to think about it. And so that's another fun aspect of it. And again, of course, there's speed, combat movement in squares on the battle grid, which your lithe feeds directly into, and jumping distance and how much you can carry. One crucial aspect of the root traits is that I wanted to create a system where you can build characters that make sense with your root traits without being restricted to a particular calling. So in so many systems, if you want to play an intelligent character, for example, you want to, in your case, you wanted a high initiative would come off of your intelligence, and in Alpengard it would come off of wise. Well, you want to play Sherlock Holmes or whatever, wizard. There's your option. Wait a minute. Shouldn't an intelligent fighter be every bit as deadly as a strong or quick one? Someone or a wise fighter? Someone who's outthinking you on the battlefield? So what I did was I created a combat system where, yes, certain root traits lend themselves to, say, weapon attacks, and others lend themselves to magic attacks, but there are hacks and workarounds with the powers you take such that, you know what, I really want to play a super extroverted, outgoing, charismatic, life of the party druid, and you can do that. And also make the druid hyper strong and pump points into glint and brawn. And you can do that and be the life of the party and the spokesperson for the group, and you will not sacrifice combat effectiveness. So what that does is give you a lot more personality flexibility of, okay, I want to play a hyper charismatic warrior who can inspire people. I'm not necessarily stuck with Joan of Arc. I could tweak it in other ways. And find ways to say, oh, someone with a high glint score and a high lithe score. This is an archer who's a master at shooting people with the Welsh longbow. Speaking of famous weapons from the past, but is just also very alluring, very endearing, and yeah. So you can go down all those rabbit trails.
Okay, sounds interesting. Sounds. Does that detract a little bit from making those important decisions, though? For example, if you've got a character where strength's important because that's wielding melee weapons, but you're also having to balance it with something like charisma because that's where your inner energy comes from, your spirit. If you can tweak it so that you only need to invest in, say, 1 or 2 attributes, because what I've got from this so far is that you've got what's considered a multi-attribute dependency system, which, by the way, I love. Every attribute has an effect. Every time you create a character, there's trade-offs to what you're doing. Have you ever had a player who can game the system in a way that you didn't expect by using these workarounds to effectively kind of dump stats some stuff that should potentially have been important to them and focus on minor, the other attributes that have additional effects, like, for example, giving you a load of pneuma and attaching it to all their combat abilities?
So actually, no, and I'm going to have to clarify this. So nothing becomes dump stat. Glint is permanently what goes into your pneuma pool. Brawn is permanently what goes into your grit. Lithe is what permanently goes into your speed and jump distance, etc. That does not change. The tweak comes with, I force you to use 2 of the root traits for your accuracy and your damage. So you're going to have to focus on at least 2, even if you're stacking for combat. So say you make an assaulter, which is my warrior call. You probably, if you don't want to take any of those workarounds, it's brawn and lithe are your 2 root traits. So strength is going to be one of them, and agility/dexterity is going to be one of them. And you can flip them. You can say, hey, I really want to focus on brawn, and I think harm is more important. So I'm going to make that my harm root trait with weapon attacks, and I'm going to use lithe as my accuracy root trait with weapon attacks. It was the strike modifier. Or you could flip them. But what you could do is you could take a power that lets you say you can substitute one of them. So I want to play a really, really wise warrior who's eventually going to be a complete sage to whom people come for advice. So, okay, I want to go wise and strong. So burly and wise. I'm going to take a power that lets me substitute wise into one of those weapon attack root traits. So all of a sudden, I might be using wise for my accuracy and brawn for my harm. So all those root traits are locked into the statistics they affect, except for accuracy and harm. So all of a sudden, I can build that combat effective character. And yeah, I'm going to focus on wise and brawn. But no, if you only focus on wise and brawn, sorry, your pneuma pool is going to be low. You aren't going to be able to speak as many languages. You're giving up training levels. If you're not doing lithe, yeah, you're going to be slow. And the system will punish you for that as well. Like, wow, you have literally a sprinting speed of 2 squares in your 2-second combat round. And I've seen that. And sometimes you're okay if you have ranged attacks, and sometimes I don't have to outrun the dragon, I just have to outrun you. So a person can be stuck at the back of the food chain. So yeah, hopefully. And it's the same on the magic side as well. You have casters who could.
And if I've read this correctly, to actually do that, you're having to give up part of your power by taking a power that gives you that exception.
Correct. So you have a certain number of powers that grows with you throughout your character. Oh, okay, I'm at this level. I gain access to a certain number of powers in a particular tier. So there are 30 character levels divided into 10 tiers. Every time you get to say level 4 or level 7, you're starting a new tier, and you have access to a whole new range of powers, but you have limited power accesses. So you don't get a wizard who makes it to tier 6 suddenly has access to all the tier 6 wizard powers, but you don't get all of them. And if, back way in initial character generation, when I was just taking these things to tweak my character, you know what? I really wish I had taken that dawning or beginning tier power. And I want the tier 6 power, but man, I wish I'd taken that. Well, I'm sorry, you did this so that you could substitute this root trait, or you wanted to stack some skills. There are a whole bunch of options there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, that sounds fantastic, because I think that's a great way of balancing it. It's those strengths, weaknesses, pros and cons. Sure. Every decision has an impact on your character. To round off characters, are there the races of your setting? Or what kind of races should we? Sorry, Hen?
Before we do races, there is one thing that I really want to know.
Okay.
And that is your attributes that we've just been discussing. How do you get them? Do you roll them?
You stack points, so you get to apply them. So no rolls. You just start your character with a certain number of points. And by the way, typically you start at level 4, because I designed the system such that I wanted to be able to have child characters and not them. So that's kind of 1 through 3 is the ascension from childhood to early adolescence. From basically the earliest time you'd be considered something resembling a combatant to, say, age 11, 12, something like that. And then level 4, that's more coming of young adulthood. So that's your quinceañetas, your bat or bar mitzvah. Okay, you are now coming on the cusp of coming into your prime. But at all those levels, you would have gained root trait points. You can stack them however you want, although I do have a cap based on tier, such that
So the points, so it's a fixed pool of points, and everybody gets the same pool of points when they start their characters.
Correct. I love all those old systems and I see all the debates about them online of rolling D6s and things like that, which is really, really cool. And I think that's a great way to go. Just for the sake of Alpengard, I wanted it to be stacking. And I know there are ways in those roll dice systems, you can just leave it open to the GM, give people fixed points to apply, or you can make them roll dice. And the rolling dice is fun, and some people enjoy that. Hey, I got bad rolls, but I'm going to play it. Darn it, and that's terrific. And it's just for the sake of, in the case of Alpengard, this worked better. Though I also love those roll dice systems as well.
Yeah, no, if it works for your system, that's great. Now I think we can go over to race. So. Yeah. I think from what you've said, it's not just a system, but it's a setting as well. Yeah. So picking up on Dean's question, which I've stolen off him.
You have.
I've got so excited now I've forgotten the question. Yeah, what races have you got in your setting?
Excellent. So there are 5 folks, which are my races and ancestries. So first you have your elves, which is classic fantasy elves. And you have your dwergs, think dwarves and halflings. Mm-hmm. Then you have your fauns, which are fauns, satyrs. So, and I have kindreds under each folk. So you have different ethnic groups, and your fauns could be anything from someone with ibex horns to no horns and zebra legs. But they're all bipedal. So these are all 2-legged folks. Then you have your orcs, which are more like half orcs or half goblins, so not quite as full-fledged demonic looking like you see in the Lord of the Rings, where this is just a monster. But these are definitely people, but at the same time with an aggressive fangs sticking over the lips, bent to them. So they're carnivores. And then you have the shalks, which again, pulling an old English word there, but those are your humans, and full range of beautiful ethnic groups like we see in the real world, and you can play them and. Yeah,
fantastic. So that's nice. You've got a full range of races. There's lots to play. So that's really great.
Yeah,
and it's always a challenge when you're designing a system of how many races should we create, because you want the fun factor there for people to have that choice. If you have too many, it can start to feel like Jabba the Hutt's palace, where you're just scaring across the room. So are they really that different, or is it just more different appearance? So for the sake of Alpengard, this one, I felt 5 worked well for the system, though, of course, there are systems that do well with more or fewer. Right?
Have you got, so I'm just thinking now more about your setting, and as usual, I go off script, which always is quite amazing.
It does.
Yeah, I'm getting into trouble now. But if we have a look at the setting, have you got one of those races that are more predominantly sort of within the world than others, or are they all sort of equally distributed?
They're pretty well balanced. Chapter 13 in the core rulebook, you're going to find something called the World of the Stone Mirrors, and that is the primary campaign setting that comes with the book or the ebook. And I kept the 5 races pretty well distributed in there. I gave them all, I described just one part of the world, just a small section of it, and left the rest of it as a blank canvas. But I did thoroughly describe all the realms and lands in there. And yeah, the Shelks, the humans, are a bit more, not necessarily numerically, but prevalent in terms of the number of realms they have as opposed to population, but they're all there. And so, yeah, they'll all fit in. For sure.
Excellent. I like that.
Good. Can I come back in now?
Are we going to let him? Yeah, go on.
Fantastic. So we've covered the races, but could you talk me through the steps in creating a character? So I've arrived at the table. I want to create a brawler, a big sort of heavy, beefy guy with a big sword, human fighter.
Okay, so you're going to choose Shelk for your folk,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're going to choose for your call, which is your calling, is you're going to choose Assaulter. And are you thinking more barbarian or heavily armored knight?
Heavily armored, I think.
Heavily armored. Okay, so pretty soon you're going to choose your kin, which is your ethnic group for your Shelk, and you can choose from among 5, which are just spread across geographical locations, and or just their ancestries are from those regions, and just like in the real world. And then you're going to start, once you fill in some other information, you're going to start picking your root traits. You're going to look at your call and your folk, which are going to give you bonuses in particular areas, and your choice of folk as Shelk. You're going to be able to pick a couple of root trait points, and then you're also just going to get some random root trait points that you can assign wherever you want. You're going to look at the maximum root trait points for your tier and assign them, and start thinking about your character's personality and capabilities. So am I just going to stack lithe and brawn and just go for a true physical specimen who serves as a heavily armored knight? Or am I going to put something up here as well and focus on that? So you're going to assign those root traits, put in all the stat calculations. And by the way, I did create a calculation scroll to go along with the character scroll. So you can see, okay, that's just a piece of scratch paper, but it shows you where to put each point. And okay, this is going to have a domino effect here. And you're going to enter those things. You will get bonuses to your defenses based upon your folk and your call. And once you've assigned those root trait points and put in everything you get, and by the way, you'll also get training levels for having chosen your folk and your call as well. So you would be a Shelk Assaulter. And once you've assigned all those things, seen how all the stats played out, then you're going to start thinking about weaponry and armor. How slow do I want this big sword wielding character to be? What can I afford? Because part of Alpengard's realism is responsibility, because financial responsibility that's part of the real world. And deliberately made it part of the fantasy world as well. So when you're starting out, you're not going to be able to afford the full plate armor that you want, but you're probably going to purchase the heaviest armor you can afford. It's going to restrict you. It'll probably penalize your speed. It will definitely penalize skills like lurk or toil, which is your athletics. So you'll be running all those calculations through your life skills. And you're also going to purchase your big sword. And you're also going to think of, do I need some ranged weaponry? And what kind of, just because, especially as a heavily armored warrior, even if you stack lithe, that armor is going to be slowing you down. So you might not be able to close as quickly as you want, especially as lower level and get into the melee. So you're probably going to choose a barrage weapon, which is a ranged weapon. Do you want a sling? Do you want a bow? By the way, I deliberately designed the weapon system so that you can create the mental image that you want. So I categorize them. So instead of, say, maybe a great axe having a statistical advantage over a great sword, which is realistic in some ways, it's bigger and heavier, but slower and harder to wield, I just threw them all into the same category. So you could say, do I want a great sword? Do I want a great hammer, a huge axe? And it'll all be in the same sort of stance capability. So you're gonna look at those capabilities. You're probably gonna buy a great sword, which means you're usually gonna be in the aggressive stance, which there are stances in Alpengard where you can parry at the end, and aggressive is maximum damage. But if you burn Numa to parry, you're not going to get as much benefit in effectively deflecting others' blows, where you could drop back into the offensive stance with your greatsword. You're going to do slightly less damage, but if you burn Numa to parry, you're going to get a higher bonus to your defense. Or you might say, you know what, I don't want the greatsword. I want to play a Thai or Filipino-style stick fighter, and I'm going with sticks. So I'm going to go in the elusive stance, in which case you wouldn't do nearly as much damage as you would in aggressive, but you would get a huge bonus for parrying. So those things are going to run through your heads is, okay, I need offensive and defensive capabilities. And you're also going to look at your powers. And that'll be the big thing as far as really fleshing out your character. Say, okay, I've assigned my root trait points. I have some random or open slot life skill training levels. I've stacked. Do I want my character to be literate, or I'll leave him illiterate. Why not? Make those decisions. And then you're going to look at your powers and say, okay, do I want this to be someone who can accelerate on a dime? Or do I want it to someone who's going to be unbelievably fearless? So there's a power called unbelievably fearless. And if you get hit by a fear effect, you have bonuses to resist it. Do I want to stack certain skills? That, wow, this character is going to be strong and quick, and despite the fact that I'm going to be wearing armor that penalizes me, I'm still going to take a skill boosting power and put some of that into lurk, even though it's just going to counterbalance that negative modifier. Even though I know I'm never going to be as sneaky as the more roguish character out there. You assign your powers as you wish, and you could also make the decision of, do I want my assaulter to dabble in magic? So do I want to take powers called aspect of bard, aspect of paladin, aspect of ranger, or aspect of sentinel, or aspect of assassin? And these would give you access to various types of magic. For example, aspect of bard would give you minor access to wizard magic. And it's going to cost you more pneuma than a power would for a wizard, but you can still do it. So you're thinking, as a knight, was this someone who would have been trained in chivalry and maybe, had a little magic mentoring, and maybe that instead of a ranged weapon, I'm going to take arcane fire ray so I can shoot a fiery ray. And so that's what's going to cross your mind.
Okay, it sounds like you've got a lot of options, and I love having
that.
A lot of options.
I love options.
Cool.
The powers you get to choose from, is it a pool based on your occupation, your class, or is this a general pool or combination?
Combination. So there are some general powers that, sure, anybody can take. And if you want to play, there are scenes in the Lord of the Rings where Gandalf is throwing down at point blank with a sword. In The Hobbit. So you can build a wizard who can do that. And you have a general pool that, I want to be able to use bludgeoning weapons and have an extra, be able to burn pneuma and have an extra bonus when I'm wielding a bludgeoning weapon. So, sir, it's Gandalf with a maul, a great hammer, running around. You can do that. So, yes, you have your pool of general that's available to anybody. If you are a magic wielder, you also have sort of a general magic wielding pool, some of which you'll get for free, and others you have to pick, and then you'll have specific to your call. So, for example, your assaulter, if you decided, I'm going to take aspect of ranger. Cool. Well, now that takes a power access. You not only have the general pool, the assaulter pool, you also now have access to the general magic user pool and the druid pool as well. So then you can start picking and choosing and say, is that worth it or not really?
Yeah.
But,
So what you've got here is almost a classless system, because you can dabble in pretty much any class from your core class.
You can, but there are sort of, for example,
lanes.
You're going to run out of pneuma quickly. And for example, as an assaulter, you do the most damage with your weapons. So for example, you have a higher variable. So it's not just a fixed, say, 1d12 for a great weapon. It's, as an assaulter in the aggressive stance, you would have 2d8, whereas a step down, the monk would have a d8 plus a d6, so max 14, so 16, and on down the line to the wizard. Whereas the wizard is the most powerful with magic, especially aggregate. So the assaulter, so there's definitely class distinctions. The assaulter is the best one-on-one. You need to take down something at point blank and deal maximum damage to one target. Assaulter is usually the way to go. Maximum aggregate damage, wizard is at the other end, and wizard is the weakest with weaponry. And then on up the line, druid, exarch, and monk. Not surprising.
There are core things that you cannot change given your class. So even if I dabble in magic, I will never be as good as a pure magic user.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And you're going to have to probably spread yourself a little thin if you're an assaulter dabbling in magic among the root traits, or take a power but you're still going to be, if you're an assaulter who dabbles in magic, you're going to end up focusing on a minimum of 3 root traits.
Yeah.
Because even if I'm using 1 for accuracy for, say, both weapon and magic attacks, I'm still going to have to use a physical in my weapon attacks for harm, and I'm going to have to use a different mental or spiritual attribute for my magic harm.
Yeah.
So it will, I don't want to say it bites you, but there are trade-off consequences there.
Yeah. And I'm assuming your accuracy and harm can't be the same attribute.
That's correct. And one of the reasons I did that is because in so many systems where you use the same attribute for accuracy and harm, let's say you're trying to build the big dumb goon who can barely hit the broadside of a barn, but every once in a while when that ogre hits, ouch, he's going to knock you into next week. But if you're using the same attribute, well, accuracy is necessarily going up at the same time as damage inflicted with that fixed bonus. But if you use 2 different ones, all of a sudden, like for example, if you go on to the Alpengard foes page and click on the ogre, you will see that I deliberately used a mental score for its accuracy so that I could keep it at 0. So just, this thing has, very little chance of hitting you, but you can tell that everything's been pumped into harm. And in that rare instance where it gets you, you're going to feel it. Yeah, exactly. For sure. I've had some people get one-shotted, so.
Yeah. I've got just a couple more questions before we move on to the next section. So firstly, damage and how much damage you can take. Does that scale with level?
Yes. Well, you're going to get some bonuses, yes, from your level, and it will scale. And of course, you also have to pump brawn. Yeah. And the other thing I should have mentioned was about armor in Alpengard does not make you harder to hit. It makes you harder to hurt. So it might even slow you down and penalize, speaking of negative mods, like you'd asked about earlier, it might penalize your nimble defense.
Yeah.
And wow, I'm easier to hit. But you know what? On the balance, maybe that Renaissance style plate armor, and I'm carrying a shield, and I have literally a -20, which is a negative is a good thing in terms of damage resistance. So you'd see wreck harm, which is your impact harm. And if I'm sitting there with a -20, that applies to every strike. So it's not just across the round. So if a dragon hits me 5 times, and maybe it's capable of doing 30 damage on a strike, but if I'm subtracting 20 each time and it hits me 5 times, I've subtracted 100 right there. So that may be worth it, but again, you're slow. Classic, that was seen in the gladiator arenas in Rome. They would have the heavily armored one versus the lightly armored one. It was always the classic slowness and invulnerability, or lack of vulnerability, versus speed and agility, but vulnerability. So
does armor protect you against magic? As in a fireball? No. So
No.
you've always got that weakness.
Yes, that's always there. And it's but for example, the fire orbs power, which is a wizard power, that may be targeting your nimble defense. So that's going to be although gosh, I'm gonna have to look up my own system. I always forget I created so many power. I think it normally targets fettle. So it's actually, the idea is that in magic, if it targets your fettle defense, it explodes all around you. It does touch you, but is it going to materialize to cause enough harm? So your fettle resists it. And same with mindfulness. It's basically almost opposing the magician who's attacking you. Versus a fire orbs, there is a way to burn Numa and make it attack nimble, in which case it's a raw explosion, but it doesn't fill the entire cube where you're standing. So the idea is, you know what? It is a burst of flame. And I could. So the answer is it depends on the attack.
Yeah.
So.
And the final question, over the 30 levels, you mentioned that your root traits, I think root traits, is that correct? They are capped. What does that cap kind of start at? And at what point does it become 10?
Okay, so it reaches 10 in tier 8. So it's I allow it. I started at 3, and then you work your way up. And you know what? Let me make sure I'm positive, but sometimes I forget.
You know something, when you've designed systems like this, it's amazing how you just go, hang on a sec, let me double check. And you know what I love about this is that you've asked a lot of the same sort of questions that we've asked as we've been going through. Things like armor shouldn't be whether or not you get hit, it's how much you get hurt and stuff like that. You seem to have gone down a very similar sort of thought process as we have, and you've obviously got the same sort of love for in-depth character driven games as we do. So I love this. It's superb.
Cool, thank you. And yes, I just confirmed you do start at 3, and then your max goes up 1 per tier until you reach 10, well before you get to the crowning tier, which is tier 10. So, well, just a couple tiers before it. But yes, there does come a point where, I want to start putting 10 into a couple of root traits, but that means there's some others that are very low. And that figured into my mindful defense, which some of those mind affecting attacks are pretty nasty. And so
so by my reckoning, roughly level 22 is when you enter 8th tier.
Let's see. Yes, that should be correct.
Yes. It's a bit of a weird one because your tier multiplied by 3 is not when you enter the tier, it's when you leave the tier.
Yes,
plus
exactly.
1.
So 3 times tier plus 1, that's your max, and then you cap it. 28 is when you start the final tier.
This is why Dean does the maths. So my favorite all-time class is Wizard. I love spellcasting. You will hear on every indie game spotlight what about the spellcasters? So my first question to you about this is, how does spellcasting work in your system? So is it spell slots? Is it spell points? Is it restricted? Explain to me how spellcasting works.
Yes, so it's directly tied to Pneuma. Some spells cost 0 Pneuma. So for example, the Wizard Fire Orb's power is a 0 Pneuma power. So you can use it at will. However, there are things you can burn Pneuma. For example, you might want to upgrade your strike roll. Again, that's the standard, improved, advanced. Or you might want to upgrade your harm. Again, standard, improved, or advanced. And there are also special items you can add to it, such as, I want to make the explosion not only happen, but I want it to persist. So the fire sits there and where you launched it, will continue to explode and affect anything that passes through that area or starts its turn in that area. So you get extra attacks out of it, but it costs you some Pneuma to do that. You can do that, the same thing with a lot of other powers, such as the Druidic Ice Wind. So you might be able to burn Pneuma to make something persist. Or you may be able to burn Pneuma to switch it from a fettle attack to a nimble attack. So for example, Fire Orbs, you're facing that ogre that's got, because of its brawn, its fettle defense is through the roof, you're unlikely to hit it. But you could burn 1 Pneuma to convert it from sort of ethereal magic to mundane magic. And so yes, it's tied to how much Pneuma you have. And again, 0 is fire at will, but your access is limited by power access slots. So as you as a wizard progress, you gain access to wizard powers or other powers. And if you take one, you're not taking another.
Okay, so does that mean there is a set number of spells per sort of tier? And do I always know them, or do I have to memorize? What sort of restrictions or access is there?
Yes, you have a limited number of access slots that come with you as you grow. So when you reach a new tier, you'll be able to access 1 or 2 powers from that new tier, and those are the only ones you know. If you pick one power, you literally do not know the others. So unless you have some sort of, say, a magic inscription, which is a scroll or a tablet that may let you do a single use of that power, then you do not know that power. And what that does is also allow two wizards could be very different. One could focus on one area and one could focus on another. And so you can build it that way. And there's some more nuances to it.
How many powers are there?
Depends upon the tier, but by the time you get to the final, there are dozens. So chapter 5 has loads of them, even within each call. So you'll have a lot of choice and a lot of decisions to make.
Nice. But once you know them, they can't be removed from you.
Correct. Yeah. You do not lose them. What you do lose is the pneuma. And some powers require one or more pneuma even to execute the most rudimentary form of it. Okay. So that will be the challenge you face, especially in a dungeon crawl situation of, hey, should I burn that 2 pneuma to upgrade to an advanced strike, or am I going to need that mega pneuma costing power to defeat the boss who may or may not be around the next corner?
So that brings me on to my next question. When do those sort of spells refresh? Is it at the end of a combat? Is it at the end of a day? Is it at the end of a week? Gosh, even the thought of that makes me sweat.
Yes, absolutely. It's again tied to the pneuma pool, which will recharge every day once you have rest with full nutrition and hydration. So once you regain your pneuma, you're back in full action, and you don't lose them.
Excellent. And I can cast any of the spells that I have learned, or any of my powers that I've learned. I can cast any of them as long as I have enough pneuma in order to cast and pay the sort of excellent.
Exactly. Yep.
And when you run out of pneuma, you can still cast your 0 cost ones, but you can't modify them or alter them in any way.
Precisely. Yeah. So it's okay, great. The druid launched Icewind, but she cannot afford to make it persist and coat things in slippery ice. So that's what she sacrificed by being out of pneuma.
Cool.
Right. So say for example, I get something, was it if I started off at say level 3 and I get some spells, do those spells increase with me as I go up levels, or is there at any point where they become sort of obsolete and you're not going to use them anymore?
I've never seen a power that becomes obsolete in Alpengard. I always incorporated some measure of scaling. And, well, I shouldn't say always. A lot of them have effects that will depend upon tier.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about an attack power, such as your famous wizard fire orbs or blade storm or something along those lines, just you stacking your root traits will increase your accuracy and harm, which it will inevitably go up as you gain in level and tier. So minimum that. But a lot of them will have extra effects. They may inflict a penalty upon someone. Again, you'd have to burn pneuma to do it, but it may be based upon your tier. So, or it could be half times your tier rounded up. So if I'm tier 9, I'm going to inflict a -5 penalty to some stat or another, versus when I was lower tier, that penalty would not have been nearly as high. So I attempted to, even at the highest levels, even your basic, what would be the equivalent of just kind of 0 level powers in many other systems, they're still going to be useful. And but yeah, if you run out of pneuma, you may not be able to launch that devastating volcanic attack, but fire orbs is always going to be useful unless you're against a fire creature. So yeah.
That's great. One of my questions that I've got around spell casting is, have you got spells that either enhance skills or potentially replace skill use? So I'm thinking about some of those spells that might be utility. Can you use them instead of learning those skills?
Wonderful question. So the first prong is yes, there are absolutely powers that enhance skills. Part 2 is I deliberately avoided as much as I could spells and powers that replace skills, because nothing drove me nuts. Like, for example, in older editions of some popular games where one dude has been stacking his character to be able to pick locks at absolutely masterful level, and somebody has a power that can just, I cast that and the lock has been picked. I wanted those skills to be valuable. So I avoided that as much as I could. I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but for the most part, I think I did a pretty good job eliminating the skill replacing magic.
That's great. So how powerful can I become? So I love my powerful spells.
Yes.
I do. I love it. I'm not going to pretend, oh no, I like the low level spells. No, I like high level spells. I like blowing stuff up.
Absolutely.
How powerful can I become?
Yes, the megalomaniacal cackle is absolutely appropriate. You can become very powerful. With that said, in Alpengard, I deliberately designed the system so even the most powerful characters are still vulnerable. So in a system where this other system might allow a high-level wizard or druid to literally bend reality, I limited that a lot of times. So I don't have really, for example, teleportation spells. There are things, if you want to climb Mount Everest, you get to climb Mount Everest. Yeah. And yes, although speaking of not replacing skills, all those mountain climbing skills, oh yay, one of our assaulters stacked toil, the toil life skill and various mountaineering techniques. So yeah, you're not going to find a way around that. So yes, you can become very powerful, but you, even as a mighty wizard, you're still a glass cannon, and you may get taken down very quickly if something targets you and realize, ooh, Vicky is a threat. Well, guess where? I'm throwing my next rock. And
no. I'm behind the meat shield going,
good for you. Which is entirely valid. Absolutely. Yeah. So yes, I think in Alpengard, there's going to be enough enjoyment of that power curve for you. At the same time, admittedly, when I was designing it, I kind of wanted to, well, it doesn't lend itself necessarily to the power gamer who wants to crunch everything and really gain an advantage over fellow players. So one of the things I focused on, and I've gotten some pushback on this sometimes because I focused on game balance, but for me, it was a positive that whether you're a monk or a wizard, everybody feels valuable and has something significant to contribute as opposed to being overshadowed by another character. So Alpengard definitely lends it to that, to where everybody's skill set brings value to the table.
I love the fact you said that there was no teleportation magics, because the best campaigns that we've played in other systems has been where Dean has immediately done something to stop us teleporting, stop us. And, divinations don't work, teleportation doesn't work. And guess what? You've got to walk, because part and parcel to me, every good book I've read, it's the journey.
Absolutely.
So I love that. I absolutely love it. And yeah, I think you two talk in your sleep or something, because you seem to have asked very similar questions.
We've both approached this from I think the same core reasoning, and it's things like powerful divinations, teleportation. No, yes. Anything that would, if it existed in the real world, how would it break our world? And if it breaks our world, it shouldn't exist in a fantasy world.
Right. Yeah, and it's, I love how you put that, and both of you, how you're articulating this. And it's the plot busting thing too. I do have various divination powers, but they have a high chance of going wrong. And you don't know what your information source is. Yeah. I'm invoking this. What if it's something evil talking to me and I don't know? And it's just a giant question mark. And there's a percentage chance it could fail or be feeding you in misinformation. Or again, like those skills, the lock picker, if you can just walk through walls. I mean, I love these books, but in Harry Potter, you kind of talk yourself into a corner sometime of, okay, the characters are trapped in a magical containment field. Oh, well, then how do they get rescued? Okay, we need someone with special exemption to the containment field. So it's, you can think about it and okay, maybe I shouldn't have that and shouldn't have the teleportation spells in the first place, because then you have to start, okay, is any bank vault on the planet safe? Yeah. That question immediately comes to mind. Whereas, so.
I love the fact you've thought about it. I love the fact that you've considered what it means for your world, and you've considered how you want your world to feel. Because as a player, and as a player with a character, I like to immerse myself in the world. And it sounds to me as if you've put that front and center. Make it immersive, make if you've got a wizard or you've got a fighter, that it actually feels like you've got a place in the world and the world has got reasoning around it, which I absolutely adore. So
Right.
you did mention that you've got divination magics.
Mhm.
So you said that those divination magics, you don't know who you're talking to. Are those open to wizards, or would it be, or have you got clerics? Because you've not touched on anything around your sort of religions.
Brilliant. I'm glad you brought that up. In Alpengard, all four types, all four magic wielding calls, which are Druid, Exarch, Monk, and Wizard, they are all considered clerics because they all represent the divine or the beyond in some form or another. So I gave each one a philosophical bent in terms of foundational worldview, but there's still flexibility there, and you can explore that. And in terms of the religions, if you read chapter 11, you'll see I've, in my opinion, very accurately described foundational worldviews that are in play in the real world. So you have your atheism, pantheism, and theism, and describe them fairly, and let people make their own thoughtful decisions and have their own discussions and make it respectful and really think through the issues. And I did give the four types of clerics bents towards those particular worldviews. And a wizard tends to lead towards the atheistic worldview, but you could absolutely play a theistic wizard or a pantheistic wizard, and vice versa. A druid tends to be a pantheist, but you could go theist, atheist, and work those in. So they all receive magic and are able to wield it, but there are the question marks of where is this really coming from? Are there multiple sources? Is it wholesome, unwholesome? Kind of split depending on what type of magic it is. Question mark.
So is there anything that could cause one of those classes to lose access to their magic because they don't follow the particular route that they've designated? So if they're going down the atheism type route, if they don't actually stick to that, could they lose access to their spells?
No. So this is the person's individual interpretation of the power that she or he has. So you play your wizard, and this is not dependent upon your worldview. This is, the reality is coming at you. It's there. It's how do we interpret it? Inference to the best explanation. And that is for you and your other players to have fun discussing, or maybe you don't bring it into the discussion, because I realize that can be a sensitive topic. But if handled respectfully, it can be very constructive. But you're not going to lose your powers. There is one caveat to that. Potentially, if you're accessing holiness style powers that are specifically based on goodness, then you start to do deliberately unholy things. I want to work with undead and unleash. Okay, as the game master, I'm going to step in and say, okay, we're going to switch you from way of the priest to way of the warlock. Sorry, so now you're going to be wielding unholy power. But that, except for that kind of thing, switching out a few nuances, then no, you're not going to lose your powers.
No, that's cool. I like that. That seems very. I like the way that you've pulled in those, and it's quite interesting the fact all of your spell casting classes are in fact clerics. How do I feel about that being a wizard? Well, it's fine. It all comes from me, so that's absolutely fine. That's the one I'm following.
And that's a totally valid path to follow in Alpengard. And all four types of clerics can heal. So nobody is stuck with the proverbial, okay, who's playing the cleric? Well, odds are extremely high that somebody in the party can heal. So
not if I'm a wizard, I can't.
It brings us nicely onto a big question, which is life, death, and resurrection.
Yes.
So obviously you have healing within your system. Is that always going to cost you Pneuma? I
made it very challenging to heal. So yes, there will be Pneuma. Well, there are some, for example, there's something called Scald Salt Balm, which is what it sounds like. Salts you put on an open wound and it will magically heal. And even your assaulters can use that, no problem, no Pneuma required. But for example, Vicky, if your wizard wanted to take Surgery of the Cosmos, which you do not have to take, but that's the wizard healing power. So you don't have to be a healer, but you can take a healing power.
Can I blow things up with it?
Unfortunately, no. But you can call it on friends. Forget. Yeah. I had a buddy who said, "Hey, bro, you're designing your wizard. Do you want to take a healing power so you can help the party?" He said, "No, that's immoral." So for him as a wizard, but you would need you would actually not just need Pneuma. You would need what I call a Kindler, which could be a potion or an inscription. So you run out of the ability to even launch Surgery of the Cosmos or things like Restorative Nutrients, which is the Druid healing power. And so it's very challenging. So yes, there is durability to the player parties, but it's not as if someone's just back there keeping all the fighters up. You're healing one person at a time, and you are giving up your action to do it.
So that sounds to me like it's almost like a material component you've got to have. For my other spells, when I'm doing important stuff like blowing things up, do I also need to have material components?
Not at all. No, the magic comes from within you and from the surrounding environment. You do need a conduit. So as a wizard, wands are the classic wizard conduit. Any of the 4 clerics can use a staff, because you picture Gandalf, or you picture the Shaolin monk with the staff. And so anybody can do that, but then each cleric call has its own conduit. So you will need that, but you're not going to need a pinch of dust or eye of newt or anything like that.
Excellent. So
resurrection.
Resurrection. And when do I die?
You die when you hit 0 grit. You are in the dying process, and you stay alive 1 round per tier. So if you're tier 8, you have 8 rounds until you're toast. Dean, there are no resurrection and no reincarnation unless the game master decides to invoke it. But that is beyond human capability, mortal capability.
Yeah.
And I deliberately left it that way.
Fantastic. Whilst you are dying, I've hit 0 grit, and I'm a tier 3 character, so I've got 3 rounds. Am I down on the ground, unable to do anything, slowly dying?
Yes, you are absolutely incapacitated. There is the Mend life skill, which is medicine and first aid, and someone with Mend could attend to your wounds, or someone might pour a potion down your throat or put Scald Salt Balm on you, which fortunately you're out cold for, but because it doesn't feel good. But yes, you are incapacitated and down.
Okay. Are there any lasting effects for being knocked to 0 grit?
I left it at game master's discretion. So when I'm running Alpengard, I'm going to make you a little bit out of it and loopy and assign you penalties, because your body has just suffered tremendous trauma, not to mention your mind. So I'm going to give you penalties for those first several rounds. You're not just going to pop back up and absolutely fresh for the fight. But I generally haven't made the effects last for days or anything like that. But it could. That might be a great role-playing aspect.
Okay. And if you have a good night's rest, does all your grit return?
No. So you're going to have to heal it's faster than the real world. Doctors don't like to admit how long it's going to take to recover from a particular surgery. But you are not going to heal all in one, well, unless you are only down 1 grit, in which case, sure, I'll let you heal, but you're going to have a certain number of grit points that you get back. And again, nutrition, hydration, those will play a role, because they certainly would in the real world. And I will have infections. So is there someone around who can treat the infection? And that, again, brings the Mend life skill into play.
Okay. Sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. We're big fans of when you're dead, you're dead. Hand over your character sheet. Do not pass go. Cry in the corner. You've got no chance. Get out the shredder. It's that level.
Oh, it is. There needs to be a long-lasting consequence, and we've got movies nowadays, a lot of media where they bring back characters that died ages ago. And you're there going, well, the impact is now lessened.
For sure.
And you're breaking the 4th wall with this piece of media. And I find the same with role-playing games.
Yeah.
If it's easy to be brought back from dying, death no longer holds that sway or fear, and the risks become far less real in your mind.
Yeah, completely agree. And I get that people enjoy it and want to have that safety mechanism, which is fine. If a game master in Alpengard wants to bring that into the equation, sure, absolutely, go for it. But in the system itself, it's not there. And it does create that real risk, just like even not just death in the real world, but finances. If I know I'm going to be bailed out every time I do something risky, that gives me an incentive to do some risky stuff versus, you know what, if I do this, I'm going to be taking a second or third job. That makes me think. Long and hard. Yeah.
You know, I'd just like to say that I am the sort of person that will sit there and sob uncontrollably if my character dies, because I tend to get very attached to my character. Yes. But I also feel that if a character dies, she's died for a reason. And either I've put her in a situation and I haven't thought it through enough, or it was just bad luck at the time and it was one of those things that has happened. And yeah, I hate losing characters, but I feel you need to have that threat there. Otherwise you throw yourself in without considering options and strategy. You just like run headlong into everything. When you could talk your way out of it, you could do something else. You could, you know, you can pull together tactics, and it makes you all think far more closely as a team to how you approach things, because there is that threat of death. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And again, it makes it more realistic, and you feel rewarded when you talk your way out of a situation as opposed to hacking your way out of a situation. And I think that, I don't know if I respect all modes of play, but in the past I'd run with players who literally expected to be able to walk into a tavern and verbally threaten and bully anyone with absolutely no consequences. And if the person's in the tavern, that person must be the same level as I am, and it couldn't possibly be a super monk waiting to just take my head off. So it's no, you don't know who you're messing with, and neither do the other people. So there's so many things we can't see, so many of those intangibles, and having the threat of real death or financial loss or whatever it is makes you think them through, and it brings more value to your decisions.
I like that, because it sounds to me as if you thought through the system to such a way that if you do end up with a bunch of murder hobos who just want to go through, there will be consequences to doing that. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And if people want to play the murder hobos, go for it. Don't be surprised if local law enforcement shows up at your door and starts asking you questions. And you may kill a monster who's actually very nice and was friendly, because I will throw those curveball situations. One of the points of, even you'd asked about religion earlier, was I brought in moral free will and really focusing on that and those questions of where does that come from. But could a evil looking monster actually be very nice? And what if evil is wearing the mask of light and goodness? So people may judge, the murder hobos may be judging books by their cover. Oh, it's a dragon that wanted to kill him. No, actually, the dragon was trying to rescue you from the titan that was sneaking up behind you, and you just killed your ally. Congratulations. So because they may misjudge the situation. So yes, those consequences are definitely important.
Excellent.
I love how you put that.
I do like that. So I'm going to look at Dean now, as I think I've asked all my spell questions, unless you can think of one I've missed. It's not like me to miss a spell question, though.
No, I don't think so, because we covered quite a bit of spell casting in pieces as we went through. We covered the detail of spell casting here, power of spells, healing, resurrection, which is great. We're moving on to equipment now.
Okay.
And it leads me to
shiny things.
Oh, yeah, shiny things. One question, which is, we've been talking about your harm. So the harm is how much damage you can deal. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like it's a numerical value. does that get translated into dice, or are there dice based on what you're doing plus the numerical value?
So yes, the dice are the random portions of it, and then there is a fixed modifier as well.
Got it. Okay, so this is where we talked about a great sword doing like 2d8 in my hands, but only a d12 in someone else's hands, or yeah. Okay, and then that's added on to my harm value.
Right. Correct. Yes, you're going to get, and then you have the option of the improved harm or advanced harm if you're high enough level.
That's right. So I could make all my dice roll no lower than 5/8.
Yeah.
Or I could max them with 2 Numa.
Absolutely. And
brilliant.
The scaling system did create some, speaking of crunchiness, which you'd asked about at the beginning, in Chapter 5, you're going to see tables of various scaling harm. And, okay, this is an assaulter with a common quality weapon, or it's a monk with a superior quality weapon. And people say, oh my gosh, why are there all these tables? I get it. It does create complication, but the reality is that with the improved and advanced harm, it came to a point where I really needed to keep things variable, but scale things for the various calls, the classes. And that created complication. But at the same time, if I had just given, say, a fixed bonus for, oh, you're an assaulter, you get an automatic +4, I tried that at the beginning, but then the minimum harm just suddenly, oh my gosh, even if the assaulter rolls pathetically, most opponents are going to be chopped down very quickly. Whereas just upping the random, okay, you could 2d8, you could still roll a 2.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And who only rolls 2d6 could roll, or even a d12 could roll higher than you. So it left that randomness in there.
Yeah. I think that's so important for damage, and it can turn what looks like a great hit into a glancing blow because you rolled low on the dice. I've never been a big fan of massive fixed numbers going on top of damage.
Understood.
Yeah, it makes combats less exciting, more predictable, and I don't like that. Yeah, you don't get those situations where you roll really, really well and you're celebrating, or you roll terribly and everybody around the table looks at you with such disappointment. You know, how dare you not hit hard enough?
The sheer contempt. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
And the dice go off to the dice jail.
Yes. Why should wizards be the only people who have that that level of contempt thrown at them because their fireball only rolled 1s and 2s?
Exactly.
Brilliant. Well, okay, so looking at equipment, my first question: do you have encumbrance?
Yes.
And how is it worked out?
So your bronze score contributes directly to it. Mm-hmm. Your folk also contributes to it. So, for example, the dwerg is the hardiest, but also the slowest. So again, trade-offs, but yes, your dwerg, your dwarf or halfling, has a base burly frame and can carry more than the other races. And then they scale down from there with fawn at the far end. So fastest, but lowest amount. So yes, they're basically, it's measured in pounds, and your bronze score will be contributed to that. And you can also take powers that increase your carrying capacity, and these feed directly into stats like how much you can deadlift, how much you can bench press, that sort of thing. So, but it will all scale up.
So I take it every piece of gear has a weight alongside it. Okay, so yes. Very similar to some of the early systems where you'd collect all your stuff together, and there'll be a couple of things that might not have any weight, pieces of paper, but majority of stuff has a pound weightage. Count it all up, make sure you're under your encumbrance.
You're going to have an unburdened threshold, and anything that poundage or below, you're good, and you're not going to suffer penalties. It is unrealistic. The reality is, if Usain Bolt had even had a 1 pound weight on him when he broke the world record, he would have been slowed down. So I'm not going there. It's not that exacting. Yeah. There are characters who will be able to carry 50 pounds without suffering any encumbrance. Unrealistic, but at the same time, I'm rewarding those high bronze scores. But for the most part, you're going to feel it. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, after all, we're creating a game that people can play and enjoy with some level of simulation, but not a direct simulation of our existing world.
Exactly.
Yeah. So long as it makes sense, so long as it feels right, that's what we're after. So this sounds sounds pretty good. We've covered armor, which is my next question. It provides you physical reduction on any physical damage you take. Is that right? Yeah.
That is correct. So I broke my harm, my damage, into various categories, and the most common one is wreck, which is impact, and armor will contribute to your resistant wreck. And then just below that, you will see whelm, which is compression. So that's your crushing, and armor will, some armors won't, the lighter won't, but yes, I mean, if you're in Renaissance plate armor, it's harder to compress you. So yes, so it will contribute to those.
Okay, that's pretty good. What sort of general gear do you have? How big is your gear list? Pretty
substantial. It's you have a lot of different types of armor, including special armors created just for each folk. Each folk has for example, only the Shalks know how to make the dragon scale armor. So that is literally a human invention where you have dwarvish guard mail, which is the pinnacle of armor craft, is the dwarves banging away on it. So yeah, even the armor list and shield lists are pretty lengthy. And then I also I did not bring in firearms, so I didn't do gunpowder, but I did pretty much anything else you can think of through a good portion of the Renaissance, focusing on medieval, but it's probably there.
Okay. Have you got a 10-foot pole?
I can't remember. I think I have a pole in there somewhere. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So
you always have to ask about the 10-foot pole.
The 10-foot pole is so important. If you're in a dungeon, having that 10-foot pole can be a lifesaver.
Absolutely. Is it a strong 10-foot pole that can hold up the ceiling when it's collapsing?
Do you have any rules for crafting, making your own gear?
Yes. So I have difficulty ratings and even for example, armor's a good one to look at, or weapons, but I'll say, hey, to make X type of armor, you need minimum improved training in smith or taw, which is your leatherworking, and there will be challenge rolls there, and some things, speaking of the life skills, minimum improved or advanced training, there are some things I will only let you do if you have above standard training, because even if you roll high, that's nice. You just do not have that level of knowledge. And yeah, he may be really talented. Congratulations, Das Wunderkind, but you have not been taught. So I will make that come into play.
Okay, sounds pretty good. So can you find special metals and stuff like that in the world?
Yes, absolutely. There's a whole list in chapter 7, and some of them are good versus various opponents. And if you craft a weapon from it, you could ignore a dragon's scales. All of its natural armor suddenly becomes irrelevant. So yes, you can find special metals, special woods, even special corals that if you manage to break them off of a coral reef. So yeah, it can create some fun.
Okay, so there's a whole route to upgrading your gear here, where the party, going out adventuring, they find the stuff, bring it back, they then spend time, money, potentially, and they get to put their skills to good use.
Yeah, I have whole ways to spend your money. How long is it going to take to make it? What difficulty rating? What materials do you need? Okay, we found 3 ingots of steel, which in Alpengard, you normally start with iron, which is either pure iron, or low-grade steel, whereas quote-unquote steel is high-grade steel. So that's, yay, we got that. That's a superior material. So yeah, you may take that back to the smith and say, hey, we got 3 ingots. That sounds like, whatever, 1 long sword and a couple of daggers. And yeah, I'll make you wait. If I'm the game master, congratulations. You got 3 weeks till that's done. And meanwhile, no, you get to wait on it. And you can buy enchantments, hire the local clerics to imbue them with what you want. And yes, definite paths to upgrade.
Fantastic. Talking of your enchantments, can a player character create their own magic items with enchantments?
Yes, so any of the magic wielding calls, you can take the create magic object power.
Nice.
Yes, so if you want to dig into that, it's rather complicated, but chapter 8 does outline everything. You can mix and match enchantments, and will these go together? Will these stack? Will they not? You might need a gateway enchantment, such as in a weapon. You have to take the aim true enchantment, which is just going to be your basic fixed bonus, but that will open the door to other enchantments, such as imbuing a weapon with lightning and then of course
these enchantments will create, they kind of create the layers of strength of the weapon.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. And the number of entwinement slots required to power it will go up.
Right.
So a straight weapon with a fixed bonus is going to be a lower number of entwinement slots, whereas one that's part lightning or part poison, cost goes up.
Yeah. So you've cleverly put together a system where your strength of item, you can't have a player who goes, I'll create an item, I only want one entwinement slot, and it will do all these things.
Correct. Yeah, that's in the sorry no category. It's going to cost a bunch of entwinement slots. And sure, in the case of some sort of relic, artifact, I might have something that, I mean, if you read chapter 13, there are some artifacts in there that give you a lot of bang for your buck versus some other weapons, but that's by far the exception rather than the rule for the most part. Congratulations. Sure, you can have that benefit, but you're going to pay for it, and you gave up a defensive item for that amazing. And I will throw you an opponent that targets your mindful defense. So,
fantastic. Well, what's the kind of economy like within the world? So from the rewards you would expect when you start adventuring compared to the rewards you expect towards the end of your adventuring career?
I'd say they're significant, but still limited. You're going to find some good magic objects, and you might even have to go on a quest to find one that you really, really want, or just to get enough money. So it's there by the time you're 28th, 30th level. Yes, you should have a pretty good stack of magic objects, good equipment. And so you will definitely feel like you're kitted out like a special forces soldier would be, rather than someone who just joined a militia. Yeah. But so there will be a huge disparity there. But at the same time, you're not going to feel invincible. You will have earned every item you've gotten, and whether finding it or paying for it and fighting a monster for it. So yeah, I'd like to think there will be gratifying rewards, but at the same time, for example, you asked about weight and carrying capacity. I do not have extra dimensional spaces. There is nothing. I do have one item called the Feather Pack, which is a backpack with feathers on it, and it floats a little bit and flies up and reduces the weight, so it fights gravity a bit. But you're not throwing a dragon horde in your pocket. Yeah. Not going to happen. If you kill Smaug, you get to figure out a way to get a mountain of treasure back to town without everybody coming and stealing it. Yeah. So
I think that's important, though. That's part and parcel of the realism of the world, isn't it? It's about making it feel real for the characters, and just suddenly opening something up and just shoveling in treasure just sort of breaks that.
No. Absolutely.
Yeah. Focusing on the monetary side of things. Yes. How much money would you kind of find at your starting career compared to the end of your career?
And I'm going to add something into that. And how does that relate to what somebody could earn in the sort of, if they were just doing a normal job? So what is it like when you look at the scale of economies for adventuring versus I'm going to work behind the bar?
Wonderful question. Love that. The economy is that, for me as a game master, I will throw out the huge rewards if you kill something, and you're going to be much wealthier than the average person if you succeed. But I worked in downtime, and I have a whole table at the end of chapter 7 where you can see what you can earn. And so it may very well be a situation where, you know what, I put some ranks into Flaunt, which is my performance life skill, and I'm going to play some music at the local tavern for 2 weeks, and it's worth it versus going out and risking getting my head chopped off because I just needed those 5 extra golds. So I would expect a high-level adventurer to be much wealthier than the average person, just because that's the fun of how I run these games. But you don't have to. And I didn't. My background is in economics, so I did my best. If you read chapter 12, it's a whole world chapter on world building. I did want to focus on creating realistic economies and have things scale well Are you going to have banks in the world where you can leave that money because you can't carry it around? So all those questions are going to come into play. And I want adventuring to be lucrative and fun, so there is that reward. But at the same time, no, you may need to spend some time. If you're a trained smith, yeah, it may be more advantageous to say, hey, between adventures, we're going to assume that we're using our professions to make money and keep some food on the table, and so we can replenish our pneuma. And yeah, it's a viable part of the game.
Fantastic.
Sure.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah,
I like that. So, gone through economy, we've gone through magic items. Guess what? I actually want to do the next bunch of questions backwards. I want to talk about the setting and then go onto creatures, because I think that makes more sense than creatures than setting. So I'm going to reorder everything.
Go on.
It's me.
It is.
Right on.
So we've talked a lot about your races. We've talked a lot about how it all comes together. So could you explain to me something around your setting? How tied into your system is your setting? Or have you left it sort of very loose? How have you actually tied it all together?
The setting is called the World of the Stonemirrors, and it is the primary campaign world, but you don't have to use it. You can absolutely make your own world. What I did to tie it to the system is World of the Stonemirrors directly uses all the ethnic groups described among the races as is. The calls are as is. I added in some extra societal implications within the World of the Stonemirrors, especially for the clerics, the 4 magic using calls. But you don't have to play in the World of the Stonemirrors, though it's a great way to get a taste of the system. And there are definitely a lot of extras and hidden surprises in the World of the Stonemirrors.
Awesome. In this world, have you just got a portion of this world as a starting area, or have you just fleshed out the whole of the world?
Yes, it's just a portion. So if you go to the Alpengard Worlds page and then scroll down, there's a link to the map of the Exile Shores, which gives you a 400-mile by 500-mile snapshot of a portion of the world. And so that's the part of the canvas I wanted to paint. Chapter 13 very richly describes the lands and peoples and creatures of that world, as well as the hidden plot lines. If you don't like being surprised, feel free to read the whole chapter. If you want to be surprised, as soon as you see a piece of artwork that looks like a stained glass window or a header that says Stonemere Secrets, that's where you stop.
Okay, that sounds great. And now I think we should talk a little bit about the creatures that inhabit your world. And I'm going to look towards... He's busy scribbling. I can tell when he's scribbling because he's always got that serious look on his face.
Very serious. You're looking to me. Creatures.
Yes. Because you love creatures.
Oh, I do. So
I like killing creatures.
Yeah. You mentioned one creature, a troll. So I take it you've got trolls.
Yes.
Yeah. Are they your thin, wiry, regenerate fast trolls, or are they your, oh my God, they've got a cave troll? Trolls?
Yeah, it's more of the cave troll. They're big, they're hulking. Ogres and trolls are both pretty. Ogres are kind of your quintessential dumb goon. Trolls actually tend to have multiple heads, and they tend to be smarter. So I did not make them just the tank cave troll that was brought in to be big and stupid and tear things apart. They're actually pretty cunning. So I tried to give each monster nuance, even if it's called something familiar out of mythology from our world. I wanted to make sure that someone who's played another system wouldn't necessarily be able to predict exactly what it's going to do in Alpengard.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds interesting. What kind of creatures have you got? Just as a kind of a range. Looking at your humanoids to your mythological to dragons to what's the kind of range we're looking at?
I got everything from me being kind of anally retentive in terms of organization, I have them classified as plants and insects and beasts on up to dragons and titans and archons and fiends and fairies and everything in between. So yes, a lot of the things you're familiar with will be there. Primals are made of typically one or more mixtures of elements. These are spirits that inhabit a physical body that might just be ice or wind and smoke. And you have your fairies, which are not always all that nice. And so they're not so cute typically. And
no. Fae, especially things that come from mythology and sort of are Fae related. I never understand why everyone thinks they're nice. They're not nice.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's not. And my archons, which are more angelic, these are not cute little baby-faced cherubs. These are things that would absolutely make you drop to your knees or terrify you. This is we're not wanting to just if people want to make cute things, sure, that's great, but I haven't really made anything cute yet. I do have some on my list, but so far everything is even the good ones tend to be pretty tough. And so yes, you can find demons and devils, you can find undead, I call them revenants, you can find possessions. Again, getting back into the theological background, is there an unseen world? You can see a brain, but you cannot see a mind. A mind is something else. That's the will that directs the brain. So where does free will come from? Are there disembodied forces? In Alpengard, there are. So you could be facing an opponent that will absolutely laugh at your magic and laugh at your swords, except for a counter magic challenge from a cleric, such as your wizard, in which case this is a battle of wills in the mental realm. So you may run into that kind of opponent. So you could be possessed. You could have bad luck that, oh my gosh, there's a spirit attached to me, and even the clerics are out of pneuma. No one can drive it away. So I've got this persistent penalty. It's almost like the old Bugs Bunny Looney Tune cartoons where you have the cloud over your head. So there's constantly raining on you. So that's a creature in Alpengard. So keeps it fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
I love that. You've got some real flavor there.
Thank you. And did I answer your question about the creatures?
Yeah, you did.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What would you consider your weirdest, most unique creature?
Oh, that's a good one.
This is available for free on the Alpengard Foes page because my monster book isn't out yet. But look up the Pawgik. So this is in the weird creature category. So this is a funky tentacled monster that does not just lurk in swamps. It can brachiate through trees like a monkey with all of its tentacles. So yes, it has a brachiating speed that it can use to go through the forest. It has multiple eyes, multiple mouths. It's actually very talkative. Some of them are nasty, some of them are nice. You're not sure whether you're going to get the naughty or nice one. And you have to use a social skill to figure it out. But it's a fun creature.
Fantastic. That sounds amazing. Sounds really good.
That does sound phenomenal. And I mean, as you just mentioned, you said that your monster manual isn't out yet. So I'm going to start asking you a little bit about what the future holds. So your main rules book is out now, isn't it?
Correct. So this is Alpengard Tales and Adventurers. This is a combination player's guide, game master's guide, and campaign world rolled all into one. So that's available. It's also available as an ebook on super sale right now. I think it's £3.67 in the UK. But of course the hard copy, there's a hardback and a soft.
We always like printed books. There's something about a hardback printed book, isn't it? It's just beautiful, and then you can touch it and look at it.
And if someone wanted to buy it, where would they go? Is it sold on your website, or is there other places?
The website has links to both Amazon and DriveThruRPG. So the ebook is available on both Amazon and DriveThruRPG, and then the soft cover and hardcover are available through Amazon. Hope to expand some channels in the future, but right now that's where to go.
Okay, and again, links will be in the description if you wish
links.
to just jump straight to that and get your own copy.
And just hold it up again. Just
yes.
hold up your beautiful book. Now you've got some very nice artwork on there. That's very nice. Is that so? So have you got artists? How have you done the artwork?
Yes, I have. I forget whether it's 9 or 10, but I think I have about 10 artists, and all their bios are in the back of the book.
Fantastic.
So yes, they're all listed there, as well as my designer, my website designer. Everybody's back there with descriptions of skill sets. And so when you go through Alpengard Tales and Adventures, you will see a variety of art and recognize, okay, that's a different artist and that's a different artist. And I know that a lot of companies attempt to make it look like all the same artist is doing all the same stuff. And you know what, as an independent designer, I decided, you know what, let my artists all play to their strengths. And so, yeah, you're going to see variation in there. And some of them look more like a traditional graphic novel comic book, and some of them look more like a painting. And yeah, so it's fun.
Well, that's nice, but none of us are the same. And this is one of the things I love about that approach that you've taken. And it's something I believe in, which is if you just look at even one of our countries, our art is different, everything is different. You will have artists from all different. So why restrict your book to looking exactly the same? You're going to have those different cultures coming through in your book for how those different lands are, for how things are portrayed. Everybody views things differently. And I love that approach you've taken with your artwork, because it will give it that sort of unique feel, and it will give you, and it will, each different piece will raise something different in the person who's reading it. So I love that approach. Thank you. Really appreciate that. And you'd asked about the monsters, and the monster book isn't done yet. It's in process, but there is an adventure in the back of chapter 13 that introduces some monsters. And then, speaking of artwork, I'll eventually need artwork for all the monsters, but for now, a bunch of prototypes are available on the Alpengard Foes page. So there's more than 40 entries, and all of them with multiple monsters underneath. So more than enough to create some significant campaigns and long-term adventures. Fantastic. That is brilliant. And as Dean has already said, all of the links will be here. We'll also put links out on the different social media sites as well. But yeah, this has been fantastic. Thank you for taking us on this journey. Is there anything that you want to add that you don't think we've asked about? That's an excellent question. I think it's just more that I, like you, as independent game designers, you design something that you hope will bring people together for fun. And that's the goal here. And none of our systems is ever going to be perfect, but can it allow for those great interactive, immersive storytelling situations and capture your imagination while at the same time relating it to the real world? And I think that's the aim of Alpengard, just like these other games. And I know you both know that as independent designers. So anyway, just thank you for giving me this opportunity and for taking an interest in Alpengard. And thank you to everyone who's checked it out. And I just really appreciate you both. Oh, no, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It has been fascinating, and we will definitely get that one shot in the diary. I'd love to play. Definitely. Yeah, love it. Well, we get, especially for the free ever DM. I mean, oh yeah, any chance to, you know, yeah. Yeah, he's mugging everyone. He's like, I've got to play. I've got to play. Well, thanks very much, and it's been great. Thank you.